I've always, known that the justice system was broken. And I feel like, again, that was proven, with the Atlanta 8 just on Tuesday. The police giving a statement saying, oh, the shooter just had a bad day, and kind of just like minimizing the experiences that Asian Americans are going through right now.
On March 16th, a white man, armed with a handgun, targeted 3 Asian spas in Atlanta and killed 8 people total. 6 of them were Asian women. This mass shooting comes at the peak of a national issue that came into the spotlight at the beginning of the pandemic, a significant rise in crimes against Asian Americans, and the impact of this tragedy reaches as far as Arizona. Stop Asian American Pacific Islander Hate, a nonprofit social organization which formed in 2020 after the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, released their national report earlier that day. There were 3,795 recorded incidents of Asian American discrimination from March 19, 2020 to February 28, 2021, over 100% more incidents reported from 2019. The majority of these incidents are verbal harassment, and 11% of the incidents have involved physical assault. According to the report, the majority of these attacks were targeting Chinese people at about 42%.
I feel like I have just kind of become desensitized to like gun violence and racism. As like sad as that sounds, like I feel like I'm kind of like already used to like there just being so much like Asian hate in like the United States particularly.
I think like growing up in America has made me like feel like, oh, like that's just normal. People like make jokes about stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like it's violence, and that might be an extreme word, but instances like the Atlanta 8, like that's like the deep end of the violence.
Um, I think that like I had a friend check in on me like yesterday and he was just like, "Hey, like are you doing okay? Like how do you feel?" And I was like, it just like makes me mad to like know that there are people out there who go out of their ways to like take innocent lives all because he doesn't like their race.
It's scary, and for me, I can't help but think like the people that I know, like Asian Americans that I know in my community, like could one of them somehow end up being a target? Can my parents end up being in a target? Can I be a target? I don't want to say that I'm scared, but I kind of am.
What do you believe kind of just to be the root of the problem?
Definitely white supremacy. I feel like that's a term that's thrown around a lot, but I mean there is truth to it. I read something that like especially white men in particularly, they're kind of treated like an immovable object. Yeah, an immovable object, and then people just have to adjust to them. I'm not just saying like, white people like discriminate against like people of color, but like it's been prominent as of late.
Some of it can also be attributed to the anti-Asian rhetoric used by the former administration.
I don't think it helps when like the nation's leader like contributes to the racism. Like I think it is very problematic, and that's probably why these people are like kind of encouraged to like keep going. And I think that if people start calling other people out on their racism, not just towards like Asian Americans but just like in general, I think like hopefully that would start to like stop it. I know that's like a difficult thing to do or say like when it comes to like your friends and stuff, but I think it is really important because other generations can be affected by it, and like we just want to stop this as quick as possible.
Like we have to stop treating like these people, that like they can't be changed, they can't be taught, they can't face the consequences of their actions, and we all need to like realize what it is, especially in terms of hate crimes. We can't just diminish that to being like an act of violence or like an act of, I don't know, something that you do on a bad day. So it's time to start treating these instances for what they are.
What can other people do to help in your eyes?
Becoming more aware, like culturally sensitive, I think is like a really big thing. Um, and that can be also not just like Asian Americans, but like it's like Black people and other cultures as well.
Education is something that we lack as a whole as a country in terms of like understanding like cultural differences and whatnot. But educating yourselves, and I don't know, I have a concern about people who aren't Asian, maybe like white people that come to people of color and say, oh, can you teach me about this, can you teach me about that? I kind of have an issue with that, because there are free resources out there. There are books, there are like infographics. If you really wanted to learn about those things, as a person of color, you would seek out those resources, seek out those texts, seek out that information yourself. Because I don't feel like people of color are required or should feel obligated to teach other people by repeating like their trauma, if that makes sense.
And also just like being there for your friends and like asking them how you can support them is important too.
Nathan McComb, Tucson.